This episode of the Good Living Now podcast is sponsored by Joy. Now, if you're someone who suffers with erectile dysfunction like I did after going through prostate cancer, get you some Joy Mode. Now, what I love most about Joy Mode is that it's all natural without the side effects found in some prescription medications. Plus, Joy Mode helps with heart health and blood pressure, so it's all good. Now, for more information, visit usejoymode.com. All right, go ahead, get your Joy Mode. Welcome to the Good Living Now podcast, where we talk to real people about real change leading to real health. I'm your host, Harold Leffall, and my guest today, well, she's all about health and healing. She is a regenerative health practitioner and an award-winning holistic nutritionist who reversed her own hypothyroidism and Hashimoto disease holistically and is changing the lives of millions through holistic health and mindset coaching. Welcome to the show, Julie Brar. Hey, Julie, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Did I totally butcher your name?
No, you got it. You got it.
I got it?
It was great.
Oh, good. Okay. I was practicing over here. Well, Julie, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. Your journey is just so inspiring. And then when I read that you had reversed hypothyroidism holistically and Hashimoto's disease. Now, we got to get into that because I know a lot of people may have not heard of that. But tell me what led to that diagnosis.
Well, like a lot of people who deal with autoimmune conditions, I mean, obviously I thought I had a pretty good diet and lifestyle until I realized I really didn't. But what happened was about a year and a half prior to that, my husband passed away very suddenly from a heart attack. And it was incredibly, obviously, because of how sudden it was really traumatizing, and it completely flatlined my whole system. Like, I was non-functional. I was in such a state of extreme stress and stress response that there is a relationship between your adrenals and your thyroid. And it completely took out my whole, like, my thyroid, my adrenals. And I mean, I was a mess health-wise for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And so when we hear hypothyroidism, I know a lot of people, when they talk about thyroid, they talk about having a slow thyroid and that being the reason why sometimes people can't lose weight. So can you tell us a little bit, what is hypothyroidism? What does it do to the body?
So your thyroid is responsible for every single metabolic process in the body. And so when it's hypo, it's slow functioning. And so that's when most people are struggling with weight. It's because their thyroid is under functioning. But just keep in mind that there's, like, nothing in our body is isolated, right? Glands and tissues talk to each other. So often when it comes to, like, a slow, sluggish metabolism, it may not exclusively be your thyroid. So in my case, it wasn't exclusively my thyroid. It was also my gut and my pituitary, as well as my liver. And it's very, very common, and not normal, but it's common that most people have liver, gut, and adrenal issues. And so that can tend to impact other glands, whether it's the thyroid, whether it's the pancreas. So if we're dealing with diabetes, it's going to be, the pancreas. If we're dealing with thyroid issues, obviously it's going to be either a slow functioning, or hyper is when the gland is functioning it's going too fast. So some of the symptoms are, someone will have like a quick heart, like a rapid heartbeat. Their heart rate is accelerated. Maybe they're sweating profusely. They're losing weight without any explanation. And oftentimes with both hypo and hyperthyroidism, you are going to have an autoimmune condition a majority of the time. So 90% of the people who have hypothyroidism also have Hashimotos, which is an autoimmune condition. That's what I had. And on the flip side, when someone has hyperthyroidism, that's usually connected to Graves. Yeah. So just to kind of give you an idea, like how it how it breaks down.
And so, I've known people who have had thyroid issues, and the only option they've ever been given was, either medication or this radioactive. I had a friend who had hyperthyroidism. They did this radioactive iodine that ate up, the thyroid and ended up eating up too much of the thyroid. So she ended up getting hypothyroidism, then started gaining weight really, really rapidly. So did your doctors give you those standard medications when you were diagnosed as hypothyroidism? And
Yeah, I was on 2 medications, and I mean, like, I like to say this was my civilian days, like, long before I went into regenerative health, long before I studied nutrition. I did what most people do is you don't feel good, you go to your doctor. Now, of course, I'd come out of this very tragic event, so, of course, I wasn't gonna feel good. Like, my life as I knew it was starting over in a way that I didn't really want it to. And so I went to the doctor, and the doctor gave me 2 different medications, and I was under the assumption that, okay, if I take these 2 little pills every single morning, I'm gonna start to feel better. And I didn't feel better. I started to feel worse and worse and worse. And what I've come to understand in the years since, especially as a practitioner, is that what I was dealing with was not exclusively connected to my thyroid. So, of course, the medications weren't really going to help. Like my
Mm,
weight didn't normalize, I just kept gaining more weight and I kept getting more depressed, and my body hurt more, not less. And that's really what led me to do what I do now, which is I was like, well, I know the body can heal, but I don't know how to help it heal. And clearly the doctors don't know either, because I was going to
right.
different doctors, I was going to different naturopaths, I was taking all these supplements and doing, quote unquote, the right thing, and nothing was helping. And, they're not living in my life. They're not living in my body. So they don't have to
Mm,
deal with not being able to get up out of bed without pain. They don't have to deal with like the low energy. Like I used to be so exhausted. They call that thyroid tired. I used to be so
mm,
exhausted that I could fall asleep anywhere, anytime. I was no matter how much I slept, I was just tired all the time. And of course, I was depressed. I didn't feel good. None of my clothes fit me. And of course, like we talked right before we started recording, I came from the film world. And
mhm,
this health condition effectively ended that career because let's be honest, nobody wants to hire a fat actress.
mhm.
I
Right.
mean, body positivity and all that aside, like it's a very like you have to look a certain way,
Right, right.
you
And
know?
and you and when people often talk about thyroids, they typically only talk about the weight gain component, but you mentioned several other things that go along with hypothyroidism, like depression, like low energy, and the body aches.
So the thing to keep in mind is because the thyroid gland regulates cellular, like every single metabolic process in the body, everything slows down. So
Mm,
digestion slows down, which means often there's constipation. And when there's gut issues, you have to also keep in mind that 90% of the serotonin in your body is made in your gut. 40% of the dopamine in your body is also made in your gut. So now you have sluggish digestion and your hormonal balance is out of whack. That's going to affect your sex drive. It's going to affect everything within your body. So
mm,
it's not a small issue. It's actually really, really significant. And most of the people who are dealing with thyroid issues don't even know it because they've never been properly diagnosed. And also
yeah.
a lot of times I also find that the thyroid gland gets blamed, but we also need to be looking at the gut and the liver because 60% of the conversion from T4 to T3, T3 is the active thyroid hormone, 60% of that conversion happens in the liver. And let's face it, we live in a very, very toxic environment. And so
Mm,
everyone's liver is overloaded,
wow.
everyone. Like,
Yeah.
so of course the thyroid's not going to function properly.
Right, right. And I was reading somewhere where it said that 12% of the population has thyroid issues, but 60% of them don't even know, have not even, been diagnosed, gotten a technical diagnosis with that. And women, interestingly enough, are more prone to have thyroid issues than men.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of that just has to do with the amount of stress that, women have. Generally, a lot of women that I know, like, they've got their job or their career or their business, whatever they happen to be
Mhm.
doing, and then they've got kids, they've got a household to run. It's like their brains are always going. And I also think that trauma has a component in there as well,
Right.
especially on the
Mhm.
autoimmune side. Dr. Gabor Mate speaks about this as well, how there's more women that are prone to autoimmune conditions than men.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of like sexual trauma, physical trauma that is unfortunately something that a lot of women have dealt with. The standard sort of test to diagnose the thyroid is just the TSH, which isn't actually a complete test because the TSH test only tests the amount of hormone that's being secreted from the pituitary. It actually has nothing, it's the pituitary gland that has to tell the thyroid gland to push out more hormone. But to accurately see what's happening with the thyroid, you need to have a full thyroid panel. And oftentimes that there's a cost to that. And so most people, they'll go to their doctor, the doctor will run the TSH test because that's free. And based on that, they'll get a diagnosis, but it doesn't
Mhm.
actually tell us, it doesn't
The
give the
whole
full
picture.
picture. Yeah.
Right. 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 So what did you start to do to get off the medication and reverse the hypothyroidism and the Hashimoto's?
So I looked first, I got rid of the inflammatory foods. There are foods that people are eating every single day that are, I mean, they're not just inflammatory for thyroid issues, they're just inflammatory in general. So
Mhm.
I wasn't eating any animal products, but I was still doing, processed foods, processed sugar. I was like what I would call like a junk food vegan. Like I would go and have the veggie burgers with the fries
Right.
and
Right.
so I got all rid of all that. I went high alkaline, high raw, started to look at gut health. And when you're dealing with an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's, I had already been diagnosed with leaky gut like back in 2016, but nobody told me how to fix it. They're like, "Oh, you have leaky gut." Okay,
Mhm. Right. Right.
and what do I do? Like, what does that even mean? And back then in 2016, I hadn't even gone back to school for health coaching or nutrition or regenerative health, so I had no idea, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, Now, of course, there's more conversation about these things, but back then there wasn't. And so I started to look at repairing that leaky gut. There is a way to do that. So I went on a protocol that had a lot to do with superfoods and gut health and addressing parasites. That's another big component. Anytime you have an autoimmune condition, you definitely have parasites.
Now look, now people when they hear you say that, they're like, I don't have parasites because a lot of people, when they think of parasites, they think of third world countries, and they don't realize that with all the toxicity and the food, even the water, that a lot more of us have parasites than not. Can you talk a little bit about parasites?
Well, everyone has parasites, whether they like it or not. And I mean, I have a lot of friends that come from Caribbean countries like Jamaica and Trinidad, Tobago. And, they tell me stories of like how their grandmothers used to make them drink like not great things like herbs because parasite cleansing is a regular part of those cultures. And in the US and Canada, that's not really a thing. Even my Mexican friends tell me that parasite cleansing is a part of their culture.
Mm. Mhm.
But for some reason, people just totally forget about that here.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you're eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of animal products, very acid forming foods, that's what attracts parasites. And some of those foods, like there's this big kick for raw milk. And every time I see something on Instagram for raw milk, I'm like, well, there's a great way to get parasites into your body.
Hmm.
you know? And parasites are sneaky. They go underground. They're not gonna make they're not gonna make themselves obvious, but
Right.
there are certain symptoms that people start to experience over time, and I do wanna say, like, we're more microbe than we are human, so we have lots of microbes within us, like, in our body, on our skin, everywhere. But there's a symbiotic relationship with those microbes. When I'm talking about parasites, I'm talking about entities that are taking your nutrients, that are depleting your life force, that are affecting the way that your body functions in a negative way and creating the stage for more chronic illness and disease. Those are the entities that we want to be going after.
Hmm. Speaking of Parasite, I remember I released a Parasite came out, and I wasn't even aware of what I'm aware of now. This was even before cancer. What happened was I had started drinking these apple cider vinegar, and one day I looked in the stool and there was this looked like a long plastic thing. And I'm like, I panicked. I'm like, what in the world is this? I started researching and found out that it was a parasite. And of course, at that time, I was eating the standard American diet, lots of fried food and stuff, but it really freaked me out. I'm like, what in the world? It was like this long plastic thing. And I'm like, yeah,
Yep. Well,
yeah.
anytime someone has cancer, there's definitely parasites. And, depending on, say, the autoimmune condition or the cancer diagnosis, that gives us a clue as to where they're hiding out.
Wow. And
Yeah.
that's so interesting because that was probably the same year I got diagnosed. Yeah, yeah, that was probably the same year that I got diagnosed with cancer that happened.
Mhm.
And so what can people do to, kind of eliminate some of these parasites out of their bodies? No, and then we have to get back to how, you started telling us some of the things you were doing because I interrupted you because when you mentioned parasite, little red light flash. But I want to get back because I know people are gonna want to know, exactly what you did to reverse the hypothyroidism and the Hashimotos. And but we didn't got on a parasite tangent, so let's just kind of finish this out. Well, first of all, what are some signs that people may have parasites, and just may not be aware?
Brain fog, constipation or diarrhea, anytime, like a lot of chronic aches and pains because parasites can hide out in joints, in the joint.
Mm,
I mean, your diet is usually a big indicator. Like if I mean, the other thing also is if you've never done a parasite cleanse and you're a grown up, there's no freaking way you don't have parasites.
right,
It's
right,
impossible, right?
right, right.
And so I kind of liken doing regular parasite cleansing to what you would do for your car. Like if you have a car, what do you do? What are
Mm.
some of the normal things you do? You get an oil change, you get your tires
Mhm.
rotated, right? Like,
Right.
people don't think anything of taking care of their cars, but when I talk about, like, doing at least 2 parasite cleanses a year, they think I'm off my rocker. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I mean, to me, it's just preventative maintenance, like, why wouldn't you? I mean, I have
Mhm.
3 dogs, I love them, but what are the chances that they're not passing off something to me at some point in time?
Mm.
Chances
Mhm.
are 0, right?
Wow.
Well,
Right.
because they're outside, they're in the grass, they're running around and,
Uh-huh.
I mean, they're cute. You can't help
Right.
but hug them. You know? So, I mean, I just do parasite cleanses a couple times a year. They don't have to be crazy complex. Like I work only with herbs. So I
Mhm.
don't do any of like the pharmaceutical stuff at all. I'm all about the plants and the power of the
Mhm.
plants to help the body to heal itself. And
Mhm.
and yeah, so I usually do a couple of them myself a year. Spring and fall is generally like the time. And if you can
Mhm.
time them around the moon, the full moon, that's usually when the parasites come out to play. You know? People get like, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but people get a little bit wild around that time,
Mm,
you know?
mhm.
And
Right.
what a lot of people don't realize about parasites is because they're so smart, they can infiltrate, get into your nervous system, and they can start to mess with your mood and really start create some chaos because
Mm.
that's what they do. And
Mhm.
oftentimes people think like that's who they are. And it's like what they don't realize is there's this other entity that has taken over and it's driving your cravings. So if you're one of those people that constantly craves sugar or craves junk food, that's not you, that's them, and they want to be fed. So the
Mhm.
best thing that you can do is clean up your diet, go alkaline, you know.
Mhm.
And I've heard many, many times I've heard from people saying like, "Yeah, I just started having more astringent fruits and next thing you know, I pushed out parasites." I'm like, "Yeah, because
Mm.
the environment in your body went from acidic to alkaline,
Mhm.
and they don't like that environment."
Mm. So having a more alkaline diet helps to remove them, as well as certain herbs?
Yeah, that's wormwood is one of the ones, and
Mhm.
there's, like, different herbs. I have the herbs that I work with usually have, like, different combinations of herbs because parasites, they'll get used to the same herb over and over and over again. So I tend to,
Mhm.
like, cycle through, like I think I have, like, 3 or 4 different ones that I play around with. Be like,
Mhm.
"Okay, I'm gonna hit you with this." And
Mm.
next time, it'll be something else, you know?
Mm. Mhm.
They never know what's coming.
So back to, reversing the hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. It really started with you changing your diet and focusing on your diet. What were some other things that you did?
Changing the way I exercise, right?
Mm.
A lot of times, there's this big I think CrossFit and HIIT are 2 of the workouts that a lot of people are told like, "Oh, yeah, you're gonna lose weight because 'cause you're burning so many calories." But the
Mhm.
thing to keep in mind about when someone is dealing with a diagnosis of some kind is that your body is now in a state of stress. I mean,
Mm.
it probably was giving you symptoms for a long time, and if I think back to my journey, my body was giving me symptoms for a very long time that I just
Mhm.
conveniently ignored. Like, back when I used to live in Vancouver, which would have been, like, 2006, I was teaching yoga, I was auditioning in those days for film and television and living my dream West Coast life, and but I was exhausted all the time. I would
Mm.
drink, multiple cups of espresso every single day to just keep pumping my adrenals to try to keep going, and I didn't understand that I remember one time I went to get a blood test and my doctor was like, "Your vitamin D levels are at, like, 10." And I joked with the doctor and I'm like, "Aren't you amazed by how much I get done with such low vitamin
Mhm.
D?" What I understand now is, like, that's not healthy, like, there's something going on there that I
Mm.
needed to be looking at, and I was in total denial. So, yes, my diagnosis was in 2014, but I had been, anytime there's an illness in the body, we've worked very hard to create it. We've been creating it our entire life.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of just taking radical personal responsibility for your life, the good and the bad, right?
Mm. Mhm.
So I had been creating this thing for a long time. And
Mhm.
then when I got diagnosed and I was trying to lose weight, here I was doing, there was a period of time where I did Orange Theory Fitness, I did F45, and my body's already in a state of stress. And now I'm piling this crazy workout stress on top of it. Well, I
Mm.
lost no weight whatsoever.
Mm.
Right?
Wow.
So what I started to do was I had already been doing yoga for a long time, but I just
Mm.
kept doing yoga. I implemented walking, weights, but not HIIT, right?
Mhm.
I had to find ways to reduce stress and inflammation in my body, so that was huge. Changing how I worked out was massive picking up cycling, like just going for long walks. That's like the best thing to do for your body and just in general for your
Mhm.
mindset, for your peace of
Right.
mind. Optimizing sleep was another big part of it because again, most people are sleep deprived. It's ironic because
Mhm.
last night my dogs woke me up in the middle of the night and I was like, guys, come on, I wanted to be rested. Like the one time.
Right.
But sleep is really, really important because sleep allows your body to naturally reduce inflammation and stress. And when we're chronically sleep deprived, our body goes into a state of emergency,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It raises your cortisol
Course.
levels. It throws off your hunger hormones, and it like your body's in a 5 alarm fire when you're not sleeping properly. So I really
Mhm.
focused on optimizing my sleep, reducing stress levels in general, right? Just, getting out of situations that were creating more stress in my life, just practicing the art of no.
I just don't think we realize how impactful stress is on our well-being, because we normalize just being stressed all the time. Sometimes we wear it as a badge of honor, like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm so, and it's really so detrimental to our overall well-being.
It is. I mean, stress creates the foundation for illness and disease. And then on top of that, we've got all the chemical and the heavy metals we get exposed to. And then if you have a toxic diet on top of that, like a very, very acidic diet, then I
That's
mean,
the
it's no
recipe.
one. I mean, if you want the recipe for how to create illness, that's how you get
Right.
it
That's
done,
it.
right?
That's it.
And
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like think of how miraculous our body is that it goes for so long with us making really poor choices. And it takes decades for it to finally just throw up the red flag and just say, you know what? You're a fool. I'm taking you out. Like,
Right, right.
I mean, I look at the diagnosis that I got, I look at it as a gift because
Mm.
if I had never gotten sick, I would have never taken the time to figure out what it actually takes to create health,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And
yeah.
now I get to help others with this information, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I look at my diagnosis too as it was a blessing in disguise because I know I'll be 58 in about a month. And I know if I would have continued to eat and continue to live the life that I led before, I'd be on all kind of medication if I was still even if I was still alive, because so many people who are around my age or older have accepted as normal things like high blood pressure or getting type 2 diabetes. Those things were kind of normalized in my culture. And so I know that had that diagnosis had not happened, I would have still been eating the same way I was eating, and the quality of my life, if I was still alive, would have been totally different than it is today.
I mean, you're a shining example. I mean, I followed you for a long time on Instagram, and then you finally followed me back. I'm like, oh my god, you finally followed me back. So I mean, I know your story,
Yeah.
and the thing that people don't realize is that we have tremendous agency and power over our health. You don't need the government to do anything. You can just start
Mhm.
eating fruits and vegetables today.
Right, right.
I didn't need the government to step in to do anything in order for me to decide to get healthy. And then once I decided to get healthy, all I had to do was take responsibility and practice better habits every single day. And to
Mhm.
me, I think at the core, people don't love themselves.
Mm.
Because when you
Mhm.
love yourself, you treat yourself like a king and a queen, you know?
Right,
Like,
right.
you love yourself, you don't tolerate bad behavior from other people. You
Mhm.
don't tolerate you don't abuse yourself through food, drugs, and alcohol,
Mm.
right? And
Yes.
honestly, if you say you really love your family, you wanna be the best version of yourself. You don't want to be the tired, stressed out, don't have any energy, have a short fuse, and are on multiple medications. Like, you're not even going to be around for your kids. How is that loving and supporting your family?
Right. Right.
Like, like for me to do what I do, which is I hold space for others so that they can be on their health journey and to heal. Like for me to really show up, I have to be the best version of myself.
Mhm.
You know, I have to be the example of like, hey,
Yeah.
this stuff works. And it
Mhm.
does, it
Right.
works. Right? But imagine if I was struggling with my energy and my mood and I was carrying an extra 100 pounds on me. Like, would you listen to what I have to say?
N no.
But why do we tolerate that?
Yeah.
I think what we have is a love crisis, truly.
Mm.
It's a love
Mm.
crisis because, I love myself so much that, yes, I'm going to invest in that thing that I know is going to get me healthier.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yes, I'm going to make the green juice. I'm going to drink the green juice every day
Mhm.
because I love myself. In fact, I have
Right.
juice in front of me. That's what love looks like.
Yeah.
The other stuff is just we've been marketed to our entire life and we've been fed this lie of like, oh, a good time is having beer and chicken wings and waking up the next day being, feeling bloated, gassy, and you can't go to the bathroom. Like,
Mhm.
that's messed
Mhm.
up. Whenever I have
Right.
clients come to me and they're like, well, I only go to the bathroom a couple times a week. I'm like, we need to fix that. Like,
Right.
how's that? Like, your whole lymph system is flooded. You're toxic, baby.
Mhm.
All those you can't go to the bathroom now. All those toxins are going into your bloodstream, and goodness knows what they're doing to all your different organs. Like,
Mhm.
you're a sewer.
Not a sewer.
You need to fix that, right? Well,
Right.
because just think of it logically, the way that our body is designed, we have 50 to 75 trillion cells, two fluids, blood and lymph. Blood only makes up 20%, lymph makes up 80% of the fluids in our body. So the
Mm.
blood is what, you have your green juice or you eat the apple or whatever you're doing, and that gets absorbed through your small intestine. It's your blood that is responsible for taking the oxygen and the nutrients to all your cells and tissues. But that's
Mhm.
only 20%. 80% is taking out the trash. Most people, their body is not efficiently taking out the trash. And so what happens over time, their lymph system starts backing up. And it's not just the food, it's also all the chemicals, all the like stuff that you're breathing in that you don't see. Like, we're breathing in
Mhm.
microplastics, whether you like it or not. And
Right.
that's getting into the different organs, it's getting into the brain, it's getting into the heart, it's getting into all of these different nooks and crannies, creating havoc. And that's your lymph system that's backing up. When you start to feel aches and pains, that's the first sign that your body's giving you of potential disease. Most people ignore that. They think it's
Mhm.
aging. And so
Right.
they just keep doing what they're doing. And then over time, it gets worse and worse and worse, and they'll take, they don't have energy in the morning. So I don't need coffee in the morning. Do you drink coffee?
No, no.
I
Mm-mm.
haven't had a cup of coffee in years. In fact,
Yeah.
2 years ago, we were in Barbados. I love Barbados. Have you ever been?
I've never been.
Go to Barbados. The most beautiful people ever. I mean, Mexicans are pretty awesome too. Like, I lived in Mexico for a few months and I liked Mexico too, but
Uh,
Barbados, like, so we were in Barbados and I had like this flashback to previous vacations where I used to, have a coffee in the morning. And so we saw this coffee spot and I got myself an almond milk latte. I had
mm.
one sip and it tasted so bad. And I was like, "Oh my god." And that's what people don't realize is that you get used to putting stuff in your body, your taste buds
Mhm.
acclimatize, and then you're like, "Oh, I like this thing." but you don't
Mhm.
really, and your body definitely doesn't like it. Your body's
Right.
telling you all the ways that it doesn't like these things, but you keep ignoring those signs until one day you get sick and you're like, I don't understand how this happened. It must be in my genetics. I'm like, no, it's not.
Right.
It's your habits, baby.
It's your habits, that's it.
90, like, what's the saying? I can't remember if it was which doctor it was, but someone says like, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle
Mhm.
pulls the
Pull the
trigger.
trigger, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like you don't get to blame your parents, you don't get to blame your grandparents. It's all you.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. It's
all you
all
gotta do
you.
is change what you're putting in your mouth. And then the detoxification side is very, very important because it's not just changing out the foods, but it's also making sure that elimination pathways are open, that your liver is clearing out properly, that your colon is cleaning out properly. And that can become a bit more of a process. I know it
Mhm.
has been for me because my
Yeah.
lymph system is definitely on the sluggish side
Mhm.
and there's aspects of it that I'm still working on, to be honest.
Right. Yeah,
And
right.
I just know that, like, that's just everybody's body is a little bit different, and that just
Mhm.
happens to be my thing, right?
Right, right. And
So
so, Julie, how long did it take you to get off the medications that the doctors have prescribed when
6
you
months.
after you said 6 wow.
Yeah, and I've been
Wow.
off meds now for over 5 years.
Wow.
And I just had blood work done because I'm doing a blood detox right now, so
Uh-huh.
I wanted to get my blood panel done before I did the detox because I wanted to see what my numbers were before and after. And in terms of my thyroid panel, the numbers are perfect.
Wow.
Yeah. So it
Wow.
works. And you have
Yeah.
to keep doing it. Like, I mean, and I'm sure, do you feel like going back to the standard American diet?
Oh, never. I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. And like, I just can't imagine putting that stuff in my body, knowing how it's going to make me feel, knowing what it's doing to my body, knowing all of the other, it's just like, yeah, yeah, it's like, yeah. But I will say this: we did a 10-day green juice cleanse. I do a cleanse every quarter just because I know toxins are everywhere, and it's just important that I cleanse regularly. And I had the strangest craving for Popeye's chicken. And I'm like, what in the world? It was the weird. I was driving by a Popeye's chicken, Julie, and I wanted to pull, and I'm like, I don't even, yeah. Yeah. But no, yeah, I could never think of that. But Julie, what do you wish that more people knew about health and healing?
That their body can heal.
Mm,
That's it. But
yeah.
but they have to be active participants. I mean, I had this crazy download yesterday, and
Hmm.
I'm sure you get this too. I mean, you're a spiritual person,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I also find that the more alkaline and raw you are, it's like suddenly God's on your shoulder and talking to you all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And so I got this download yesterday as I was waking up that it's like everything is energy and frequency. So in order for me to like, let's say I want, I don't know, like whatever it is that I want. Like, okay, let's say that I want a house. I want a beautiful house on the lake, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm outside Toronto. Like I want a
Mhm.
beautiful house on the lake. That's my desire. Well, it's not about hustling and grinding to get that house, but I do have to do something,
Right.
right? Like in order for that to happen in my life, I have to show up and do, what I like to call inspired right action. I
Mhm.
can't just be laying in bed all day thinking I'm going to get my house on the lake,
Right.
right? I have to match the energy, and that's the same thing, like, when it comes to your health and your well-being, it's like, you say that you want to get healthy, you have to do the things that require you to get healthy, and then what's miraculous is how quickly your body responds.
Mm.
Right? And you know that, and I know that. Like, I did
Mhm.
111 days last year on just juicing and superfoods. So no
Mm.
solid food, just like juicing, superfoods, and I actually got a download this morning that I feel like I wanna go back to that. like
Mm-hmm.
more green juices, more superfoods, and less of the solid food. And
Mm-hmm.
but what's interesting is like, and I've experienced this many times even from clients, like we start to change their diet and within days they start to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
What's changing? Well, because you say you want to get healthy and now you're changing what you're putting in your mouth, and like your body shows up for that big time and it shows up quickly,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's it's not something that's going to take years and years and years. It's like it's really fast. It's within days.
Yeah. 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 It's amazing how when we fuel our body with healthy nutrients, how the body reacts and responds. Like I mentioned, we had just finished the 10-day green juice cleanse. And I remember reading one of the comments for someone who had never done a cleanse, and she was saying how much energy she had, and she was saying how her blood pressure had normalized, and just 10 days. This is just 10 days. So yeah, the body is a miraculous machine, but we have to treat it well. We
And
have
I
to.
mean, I find like that's the same way also with like, our life in general. It's like if I say I want certain things and then I get up every single day and I show up as the best version of myself and I do the right actions, like I want more success in my business. So if I get up every day and I show up as the person and start implementing things, it's amazing how quickly the universe starts to align these things. And a lot of people, they'll look at people who are successful and they'll throw shade on that, and what they don't realize is that we live in an energy universe. You're throwing whenever you're throwing negativity out there, that's going to boomerang back to you times 10. Why do you want
Mhm,
that?
mhm.
you know
Right,
like,
right.
be happy for people, celebrate them, and then
Yes.
ask questions like, if that person created that, how can I do that?
Yep.
How can I make that happen? Hey,
Mhm,
universe, hey, God, like whatever you want to call spirit. I mean,
mhm.
we all come from different belief systems, but whatever your relationship is with that higher power, maybe ask that higher power for guidance,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
So, Julie, I know people are gonna wanna know how they can connect with you. It can be a client of yours. So, tell us your website, your social media.
So my social media is really easy. Instagram and TikTok is my first and last name, super easy. And then my website and my YouTube is my website and my YouTube is Balance Life with Julie. And website is balancelifewithjulie.com. So balance in the present tense is what I like to
That's
say.
it.
And yeah, I mean, I work with clients one on one. I also have a group program, Elevate, which is like you can join at any point in time, but I walk you through the different protocols of like how to get started on your health journey, how to transition the diet. We talk about all kinds of stuff. And I do live weekly coaching for that program so that for people who maybe don't have the budget to work with me one-on-one,
Mhm.
that's a great option, and you still get me live every single week. So,
Awesome, awesome.
yeah.
Well, Julie, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your light. Thank you for sharing your story because your story just helps us know what's possible, you know. And I always say that our stories are just not for us, it's just not for us, but it's so that we can share with others to let them know what's possible. So you're definitely letting the world know what's possible in terms of health and healing. So thank you. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.